Set, Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Dotson, here, my fellow nerd, Garret Price.
How's it going?
It's going good. Just you and I on a little date night. No Jared Wackerly. He's across the country. Matt O'Hara is mentally ill and physically ill, so he's out today. So it's just the two of us. Look at us.
You know, it's special. It's date night.
Building castles in the sky. So we're gonna talk about some NFL draft, just not like what happened and what are the cause and effects of these rookies entering their team. We had some trades to talk about that we weren't able to break down last week. Some players on some new teams. Who do we like? Who do we don't like from a dynasty aspect? And so much more. Before we get into that, though, I got to tell you guys, if you're just listening to the show now, make sure you head over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. I mean, you're going to get such unique content on top of the podcast. I mean, Garret, you just did a video with Kyle Yates. Jared and the Film Nerds, they're doing other Film Nerd stuff. You just did that video with Matt Harmon on the wide receivers. I mean, it's got almost 5,000 views already. That's crushing. And of course, our dynasty team audits as well. I mean, there's so much original content over there, Garret. It's great. It's 100% the reason why you should go over there and support the cause.
Yep, absolutely. I love the YouTube channel. And that was something that we've done on and off in the past. But this year, we're really trying to hit it hard and make sure that even in between podcasts, there's still stuff for you to watch.
Yeah. I mean, Garret does such a good job on content creation. So he's kind of really taken over that YouTube channel. So if you like Garret and you hate me, which, it's okay to do too, get on our YouTube channel and check out his handsome face and all the great interviews he has and all the great shows we have. And maybe we'll be auditing your team shirt soon. And maybe you want your team audited. You're like, Rich, Garret, how do I get my team audited on the YouTube show? Well, the best way to do that is head over to our partner, PrizePicks. What is PrizePicks? PrizePicks is the best legal way to go out there and make prop bets. You make 2 to 10 prop bets. You win 10 times your money, 2 to 5 players. And you get out there, you take some overs, some unders. You can take some futures bets. And the way we're doing it is if you use the promo code NERDS, not only will they match your first deposit up to $100, and then get you some extra cash if you want to go out there and bet on some prop bets on Major League Baseball, MMA, NBA playoffs, hockey, anything that you could think about. They have the action for you. But if you make a futures bet in the NFL, like I said a couple of weeks ago, I like the Joe Mixon over rushing yards, which is 1150. If you make a futures bet and you send it over, we have a link on a Google sheet here in the show notes. You can click on that show notes on the YouTube channel or the podcast, put in your information, put the email in you use with the promo code. Not only will it get you a chance to get your team audited, but we'll also send you a Dynasty Nerds t-shirt, the most comfortable t-shirt you will ever wear.
Hello.
Your high five intake will just increase drastically. It's the most comfortable shirt that will be in your wardrobe. Check out our friends at PrizePicks. Win some cash, get some free gear, get your team audited, and of course, by supporting us, use that promo code NERDS, and you'll be all set. Garret, are you ready to get into some of these draft takeaways?
Absolutely. That's the thing I think that gets overlooked sometimes. We talk about how good these players are or aren't, but sometimes they have drastic effects on the veterans on their team. So I'm excited to break this down.
Yeah, let's get first into a couple of trades that we saw on draft days. First one, A.J. Brown, obviously the biggest trade. He gets traded to Philadelphia. What are we looking at on A.J. Brown? A dynasty darling. Still has on a points per basis in PPR leagues. I mean, A.J. Brown's been a stud muffin. But overall, statistically wise, I mean, 1,100? I think it was 1,104. Like his yardage was like his best year. Still ready to take that next step into superstardom. They're paying him $25 million a year, 4 years, $100 million deal. So he gets the contract that he wants. Opposite of Devontae Smith. Got Dallas Goedert there as well. Miles Sanders in the backfield. And of course, Jalen Hurts, which is going to help the most here. What do you think about this trade? What do you like about it? Does this hurt Devontae Smith? Does this help Devontae Smith? Does this hurt A.J. Brown? Who loses out on this trade from a dynasty aspect, and who is set to gain in your eyes, Garret?
I think there's only one player on the Philadelphia side of this that wins, and I think that's Jalen Hurts, obviously. You add a receiver of A.J. Brown's caliber, That's pretty nice. So I think he's really the only one that I can say confidently that wins. Everyone else in this situation, I mean, I don't think this helps Devontae Smith. We were hoping that he was going to be the alpha there. He was going to be getting tons of targets. Same thing with Dallas Goedert. We're hoping that those two are going to kind of be this nice duo. And then here comes AJ Brown, arguably the most talented of the three. And it kind of jacks everything up. And even from AJ Brown's perspective, he was never working on like a high volume passing offense, but this offense is in the same boat. But now we're getting a slightly less accurate quarterback than we had before. So I'm guessing similar amount of targets, but slight drop in accuracy. So I just don't know that this is going to be, the type of wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 that we were hoping for coming into the season. I think we're now looking at wide receiver 10, 11, 12, like in there, which sucks. I want him to be higher, but I don't feel comfortable with any of those assets where I had ranked them a month ago.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, AJ Brown. I think AJ Brown is somebody. Well, I think Dallas Goedert takes the biggest hit because he was locked in as a number 2 guy there in Philadelphia, right? Because it was him and Devontae Smith. Jalen Reagor doesn't even count. Quez Watkins doesn't count. And we know from a dynasty aspect, or not even a dynasty aspect, from a fantasy football aspect, if you want to get out of that middle of the road tier of tight ends, you have to be heavily targeted. It's as simple as that, because you gotta break that threshold of catches. You gotta get over that 70 catch mark. You gotta get close to that 1,000 yards. Heck, I mean, unless you're like a Hunter Henry who's scoring double-digit touchdowns and scoring 500 yards, you gotta get the yardage. And Dallas Goedert's extremely talented. They paid him. He'll still get his targets. He'll probably still finish right around tight end number 5, tight end 6, right around there. And I think AJ Brown takes the biggest here, Garrett, because I don't think Jalen Hurts is that great of a quarterback. I still don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be the quarterback in 2023 for the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll see how that market turns up and how good they are and what draft position they have. But I do have plenty of first-round draft capital to move up in next year's draft if they feel the need to. And I think AJ Brown right now as a dynasty darling, right, who's considered a first-round startup player, top end of the second round, a top 16 pick, right, a top 8 dynasty receiver. I got to move him down my ranks too. I didn't move him down yet because Jalen Hurts hurts him, Dallas Goedert hurts him, and Devontae Smith. I mean, we cannot forget about Devontae Smith here. Devontae Smith was a top pick. He was a first-round pick, top 16 pick, Heisman winner, a very, very savvy route runner. So when Jalen Hurts is on the move and he's looking to get somebody that's open right away, Devontae Smith is most likely going to be open. So I think Devontae Smith is still going to get his. Now, obviously, they're paying AJ Brown $25 million a year. He's going to get his as well. But it's going to be that little bit of cannibalism here where they're all kind of eat into each other a little bit. So AJ Brown has 1,100 yards, 1,000 yards. Devontae Smith has like 1,000 yards. Dallas Goedert gets like 750, somewhere around there. I mean, Garrett, we're talking about tight end 6 and a couple wide receiver 2s. It's just, that's not what you signed up for. I mean, maybe if their quarterback was different, I would go higher. If they're run. I mean, obviously with the running game, this should be a pass first offense. I don't know if the quarterback can handle that, because if you have a guy like Matt Stafford, Justin Herbert at your quarterback, both these guys could easily get 1,400 yards. But I don't think that situation is in place in Philadelphia as we speak. So I would be interested, if I could, in selling AJ Brown if I could still get that AJ Brown hype price, right? Like if he's still that top 5 wide receiver overall, I would just see if I can get a clearer path to targets, like a lateral move. Like this is AJ Brown, still super talented, but I'm just trying to score the most dynasty points possible, right? So like, I'm not looking for the most talented player. I mean, Nick Chubb is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL, but he's not the first running back off the board, let alone the 5th running back off your startup board. So for me, if I can make a lateral move somehow, some way, or maybe, I mean, Garrett, would you do something like AJ Brown? Now, hear me out. This is a little crazy. Would you do AJ Brown in a 23 first for Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson?
Ooh, I think I might. I think I might take Jefferson or Chase.
I would too, like 100%, like 100%. Like I'm using this opportunity with AJ Brown, who hasn't done anything yet. And the good thing about that trade, I don't think, is like you don't get burned, right? Like you don't lose the trade. If you like the only one that can lose that trade is the AJ Brown side, right? Barring like injury to Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, because those guys are studs. Like obviously Chase has only done it 1 year, so we don't want to lock him in as a total stud. But from what we've seen last year, total stud, lock me in. So I mean, you can't lose in it. So even if it looked like a slight overpay today, it'd be an underpay tomorrow kind of scenario. I think I would try to knock on that door and kind of present it. And it's going to be really hard to do because nobody's trying to sell Chase. Nobody's trying to sell Jefferson. So to make them make that trade in Dynasty, you have to offer them something they can't refuse. And if you're going to offer that first, you might as well dress it up a little bit, put some lipstick on that bad boy, and I'll throw a 23 third in there too, just to make it a little bit fancier. 23 first, 23 third, AJ Brown for Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. I'm throwing both offers out there. I'm seeing what I can get, and I'm hoping I can get it done. I think obviously if it doesn't, you're still in a good spot. You have AJ Brown, but that's a lateral move that I'm trying to make. And I know Jamar Chase, and here's a classic example of what the quarterback can do. Jamar Chase has got T. Higgins opposite of him. He's a top 15 startup wide receiver, but he's got Joe Burrow, so you're okay with that. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen was only there for a couple more years, and Kirk Cousins is on his way out. But again, it's Justin Jefferson. So for me, I'm going to try and make that move and see if it can get done. I think it's 50-50. If you want my opinion, you have to find an AJ Brown fan. I think there's a 50, maybe even 40-60 chance you can get that deal done.
I could see it getting done. Yeah, absolutely. What about the opposite side of this on the Tennessee Titans side? How does this affect their offense? Does it affect anyone other than Ryan Tannehill or just Tannehill?
I don't know. Again, I said this on the podcast about when they drafted Treylon Burks. Like, I said the same thing about Treylon Burks. It's like, it's not like you have that much to do to catch AJ Brown's numbers. You know what I mean? It's not, again, he's not a 1,500 yard receiver, right? Like he's not this alpha 1,400 yard receiver. He hasn't done that yet. So they literally just swapped Treylon Burks for AJ Brown. That's what they did. So he'll see the same amount of targets, get the same amount of receptions. We know he's really good with the ball in his hands. I mean, you think it's crazy in a 17-game season that Treylon Burks can't get 1,100 yards and 80 catches? I don't. So I don't think I don't think it affects him too much. And they bring in a better number two. They have Robert Woods there. That's a great spot. They bring in Austin Hooper, who falls down when he catches the football, but he still catches the football at times. But I think Robert Woods is like, we all know how we feel about Robert Woods, right? We love him. So like, I think if anything, Ryan Tannehill gets a bump. I don't think he's downgraded because I like Treylon Burks. And I like Robert Woods. You still have Derrick Henry to keep the defense honest back there. So to me, instead of having just AJ Brown, now he's got Treylon Burks and Robert Woods. I think those are really two good receivers. Robert Woods could surpass that 1,100 yards that AJ Brown did. You don't think so? You don't think Robert Woods could put up 1,200 yards?
I think Robert Woods can, but I'm saying this trade, losing AJ Brown and gaining Treylon Burks, is not a net positive for Ryan Tannehill. I think it was a better situation when AJ Brown was there. And partly, I know you're saying he never had 1,400 yards, but part of that was because due to injuries. He put up 1,100 yards in like 12 games, and it does matter because when he's on the field, that's how dominant he is. So I think this is a slight stock down for a guy that already wasn't his stock wasn't great to begin with coming into the season. You're going to have to assume that Treylon Burks is going to do what Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson did for a rookie receiver to have that big of an impact. I just don't see it.
I don't know, man. I just think Robert Woods offers enough to offset that difference. That's the difference. And you're right. AJ Brown was on pace for 1,500 yards, but he didn't get 1,500 yards. I mean, Christian McCaffrey was on pace for 2,000 yards, but then he got hurt too. So what are we going to do? Now, I get what you're saying. It's just, I mean, here's the thing. Ryan Tannehill is already low in the totem pole, right? So it's not like how much farther is he going down the totem pole with this trade? I don't think his situation is that much worse. Not just because of the trade. Again, it's not obviously the Treylon Burks trade makes this situation way worse, but offsetting it with Robert Woods, I don't think it makes it that much of a. I don't think it puts him down that much farther.
I agree with the Robert Woods part. I'm just saying the AJ Brown to Treylon Burks, that trade wasn't helpful to Tannehill. But I agree overall with the offseason, the acquisition of Robert Woods is good for Ryan Tannehill. I definitely agree with that. And I think it's by far the best second receiver they've had in a while.
And to be fair, I mean, you could have easily said the same thing when the Vikings traded Stephon Diggs to the Bills for the first, and then the Vikings used that first on Justin Jefferson, and they swapped him out. Now, listen, that's an outlier. I get it, but we'd be saying the same things, like, right? Like, oh, wow, Kirk Cousins downgraded. He just lost Stephon Diggs, and they draft Justin Jefferson. We like Justin Jefferson, but, I mean, what's he going to do? Comes out, he's an absolute rocket, right? He's just a star. So,
right,
to be fair, but Treylon Burks has that capability. You know what I mean? He has it in him. And I know the Dynasty community is bound on him. Not everybody loves him. I know Matt does not like him, but I really still believe in Treylon Burks, and I'm really excited to see what he can do. And I think out of these receivers landing spots, I mean, obviously Drake London's in a good spot. We'll get there in a minute, but like, I think he's in a good spot. So I'm excited to see it. Like, I'm excited to talk about a team that was the number one seed in the AFC last year. They're getting back to Derrick Henry. They drafted, what's the running back they drafted again?
Hassan Haskins.
Tennessee. Hassan Haskins. They have another running back, a bigger back out there. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what Treylon Burks does in place of AJ Brown and what Bobby Trees does there. So I think the biggest hit again goes back to AJ Brown. Great. Robert Woods, boost. Treylon Burks, boost. You know, it's like AJ Brown's the one that gets hurt the most out of this trade. So
for sure.
Moving on from that trade though, Garrett, there was another trade. Marquise Brown gets traded to Arizona from Baltimore. They give up a first for him, that's crazy. I mean, has to be talking about, you know, all this news is coming out of Arizona about Kyler Murray and like, can they sign him? Can they trade him? Talk about trying to give this dude a nice back rub by going to get his college receiver and giving up a first to do it. I mean, wow, to get a first for Marquise Brown when you can only get a second for DeAndre Hopkins? Like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? Sweet baby Dynasty players. So, but obviously, I think this is a massive boost for Marquise Brown. Like, two things here. One, you don't give up a first for a player in the last year of his contract without completely intent to re-sign him, right? Like, you just don't do that. Right. You don't give that draft capital not to re-sign him. DeAndre Hopkins is out the first 6 games of the season. He was hanging out with Will Fuller too much. So to me, obviously it doesn't hurt Lamar Jackson because just Rashad Bateman slides in that role of nobody catching footballs. Mark Andrews is number 1 there. Helps Devin Duvernay some, who's a player that I liked. But for Marquise Brown, I mean, you're talking about a guy who already showed flashes there in Baltimore that he could be a wide receiver 1. This puts him into a position to potentially be a wide receiver 1. Do you see that path?
Yeah, I definitely see that path. And I think this was part of the element that has been missing from Arizona's offense. I think they've needed this true speedster to really take the top off the defense. And obviously, Kyler and Marquise Brown have chemistry going back to their days in Oklahoma. Because I remember scouts saying the only player that might be faster than Kyler Murray in this draft is his wide receiver, Marquise Brown. So I think they really want to speed things up. I think they really want to take the top off more often. And you're right. I think the mentioning the DeAndre Hopkins thing is big because anytime that you are missing that big of a piece of an offense, those targets have to go somewhere. And 6 games is a long time to start building chemistry, building rapport with a player. And, you know, we'll see how quickly DeAndre Hopkins comes back into the fold and, you know, is back to normal. But I think this is a boost for Marquise Brown's value. I think he's better than Christian Kirk. And Christian Kirk already put up okay numbers. I think he's going to be Christian Kirk plus 15 to 20%.
Yeah, a potential wide receiver 1. I think worst case scenario, you have a wide receiver 2, probably a high range wide receiver 2, because stay healthy as well. He's got the speed to get it done for after the catch. What would you give up? Because a player like this who hasn't really done it yet after multiple years in the NFL, they're obtainable in dynasty leagues. I'm sure people are excited about him going to Arizona, but just as many people that are excited about to go to Arizona. There's going to be people in position here looking to finally offload somebody who has not done enough, a former first-round pick in their rookie drafts, done enough to help them gain more wins, to help them propel them to the Dynasty Fantasy Football Championship or even playoffs. Would you give up a 23 first for Marquise Brown right now?
I think I would. I think I would give up a 23 first for Marquise Brown. It's tough because I've never been like this massive Marquise Brown fan, but at the same time, I think this is a good situation for him. I think this is a good opportunity for him. And part of his struggles at times where he would be wide open, and part of it was Lamar Jackson at times underthrowing him or something like that. But there were other times where he would just flat out drop the football. So it'll be interesting to see if he can clean some of that up. But I would be willing to give a first round pick in 23, assuming I'm not this rebuild team and I believe that this is going to be a top 3 pick. I think those picks might be a hair too valuable, but as long as I don't think it's going to be a top 3 pick, I would be willing to give a first for Brown.
Yeah, you get a chance to get Bijan Robinson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. You're making a backwards move on that trade. But yeah, if you're a contender and you feel like you're a receiver away, I'd be comfortable with that. And I think there's a chance that could probably get it done. I don't think teams that have had Marquise Brown are championship caliber teams. I mean, if you use a first round pick on Marquise Brown, he hasn't made your team significantly better. So you're probably still in the middle of the road, right around there. And it hasn't been too long unless you had multiple draft picks. So that's an offer I would make. You know, in Arizona, AJ Green's nothing to do there. We mentioned Christian Kirk's on the way out there. Kyler Murray's deal is going to get done long term. They'll re-sign Marquise Brown, so you have a good landing spot. Going to the Baltimore side, we all like Rashad Bateman. We all like them coming out here. The Lamar Jackson thing's a real big mystery because he's his own agent. He has to sign a new deal. They're not even really talking. They offer him $35 million right before the Josh Allen deal. He was like, this is even remotely close to what I want here. There's a real possibility that Lamar Jackson is going to play out this year, get franchised, and there's a chance that the Baltimore Ravens there's a very real chance the Ravens could end up trading Lamar Jackson. The fact that he doesn't have an agent, the fact that some of these teams, they're going to start looking at this Deshaun Watson deal, right, that the Browns made of $234 million guaranteed. And other players start asking for that. What you have to realize is the reason the Raiders traded away Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack was because Mark Davis didn't have the money to pay them. And what I mean by that is if you guarantee a player his contract, for example, the Browns guaranteed Deshaun Watson $234 million. When you do that, you have to take that whole $234 million right then, that day, and put it in escrow in the NFL. So the owner of the Browns had to write a check for $234 million and put that in escrow for Deshaun Watson because that money is guaranteed. So Mark Davis for the Raiders, hence why they moved as well. He didn't have money to pay Khalil Mack guaranteed money. He didn't have money to pay Amari Cooper. The Steelers, teams like the Bengals, when Joe Burrow's going to have to get paid, this could hurt them because Mike Brown doesn't have $234 million laying around. Like, I know these teams are worth billions and billions of dollars, but some of these owners, like the Steelers, the Bengals, some of these owners don't have that kind of cash just laying around. So that could be a situation for them down the road. So there's a chance for the Ravens that Lamar Jackson's not the quarterback of the future there, which would help Rashad Bateman a ton. I think the player I'd want to buy the most there, Garrett, which when I say buy, you might just be able to check your waiver wires, is Devin Duvernay. Speedy, twitchy, quick receiver, he could kind of take over that Marquise Brown role. I'm not excited now about it again because Lamar Jackson's the quarterback. For down the road, though, I mean, that's a player that I thought had some good upside coming out, and I think this is a year they could possibly show himself. You could probably get him for a 5th round pick, pick him off your waiver wire. That's the one guy who I think, obviously outside of Rashad Bateman, who's the clear choice here, benefits the most is Devin Duvernay in Baltimore.
Yeah, I agree. I like Devin Duvernay. Another one that's in the same vein as that might be willing to just check your waiver wire just to have him just in case he ends up being like the number 2 guy. Tylan Wallace out of Oklahoma State. He was a guy that was a decent receiver coming out of college, almost won the Bolindikoff, but then got injured, and that really set him back. They took him in the 4th round last year. Could absolutely be nothing. He could be nothing for this team, but it would be another one that if I could pick him up for free, Miles Boykin's not even there anymore. He got cut. So I think it's worthwhile to take a look there.
And James Prochet too is on that roster as well. So I would definitely, I agree with Garrett here. I would check your waiver wire for Tylan Wallace, James Prochet, Devin Duvernay. If they're there, I mean, these are the exact kind of players you want on the bottom of your roster, right? Guys that have an opportunity. And if they don't, you cut them, you drop them right back in the waiver wire. But these are guys you want to pick up because if anything at all, from a waiver wire pickup, and all of a sudden Devin Duvernay is the number 2, and Rashad Bateman starts off slow somehow, and he's the number 1. He puts up a couple good games. I mean, you just took a waiver wire pickup, you turn him into a 23 second. You know what I mean? Like there's that kind of path you could follow sometimes. So, Garrett, you want to go over some of these guys, these first round receivers? You want to start going through some of these names here and see how the vets of their teams are affected?
Yeah. So I wanted to look at least the first round guys, and we could talk about other guys that weren't first round ones, but I wanted to at least look at the first round guys. First one's Drake London. Now, there is not a lot of vets there to be affected. Really the only guy I think worth talking about, because obviously it's a boost for the quarterback anytime you add a receiver, and there were no other receivers of note there. So really what this comes down to is, what does this mean for Kyle Pitts? What do you think?
I don't think it means anything for Kyle Pitts. I think his numbers stay the same. If not, they go up. Yeah, if anything, it helps, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, you have a rookie receiver coming in. This guy was the 4th overall pick last year, pretty much at 1,000 yards last year. I mean, this is just, again, the quarterback of the future is not on the roster. That's the biggest problem with Drake London this year is going to be Marcus Mariota. So good thing Drake London's a good jump ball receiver because Mariota's not that accurate. Kyle Pitts should be okay there as well. They keep everything short and intermediate. But, I mean, this guy has top 10 draft capital. He, like you mentioned, there's nobody there to affect him receiver-wise, so I'm not really worried about Kyle Pitts. It's why Kyle Pitts is already the 1-1 of Dynasty tight ends, pretty much. Him and Mark Andrews is because he's one of those players that's going to get a ton of targets, which leads to wide tight end 1 and put up numbers with him. He's the closest thing we'll probably see to Travis Kelce, him and Mark Andrews. So for me, great landing spot, tons of targets, pick number 8 overall. If you took Drake London as your wide receiver 1 in this draft, I'd have no problem with it whatsoever. Like whatsoever. I mean, this guy is going to be the number 1, no competition. I'm sure they'll bring somebody in next year, whether they sign a guy or they draft a guy in the 2nd round, but the Falcons are going to be bad this year. I mean, they're not going to be good. They're going to have a high draft pick. They're going to try and probably put themselves in position to get, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, someone. There'll be a young quarterback on that roster sometime next year. I was really surprised they were never in the Baker thing, which tells me all I need to know. It's just basically they want to get one of those good quarterbacks next year. So great landing spot. It's weird because we're talking about some players they affect. The only person you mentioned he can affect is Kyle Pitts. I don't think he affects him whatsoever. Like you said, he helps them. So great landing spot. Love the spot for him. And I think it doesn't hurt anybody whatsoever. I don't think he hurts anybody whatsoever. It only helps him and Pitts.
What about Garrett Wilson? He was the next receiver off the board. I know the nerds were pushing the Elijah Moore train pretty hard. Big fans of him. Zach Wilson is his quarterback. Those would be the 2 most obvious effects. How does it affect those 2 players and maybe other players like Corey Davis or anything like that?
Yeah, this is one of those spots that we talked about before. Like some of these receivers are going to get that Green Bay bump, the Kansas City bump. Like some of these guys, like we all knew the Jets were going to take a receiver, right? They've been trying to trade for receivers. We knew they were going to take a receiver. And for Garrett Wilson, our number 1 receiver coming into this draft, it's just not a great spot for him. Now, that being said, I'm still taking him as the first receiver off my board because a couple things here. I believe in Zach Wilson. I like Zach Wilson. He was my number 2 rated quarterback coming out last year. I think he still has a high ceiling. This kills Corey Davis, obviously, who they signed to a contract. Absolutely murders him. I think Elijah Moore is good. Elijah Moore's so savvy. He's such a good route runner. He catches everything. I don't think this affects him that much. Obviously, it hurts him a little bit because he wanted to be the alpha, and now he can't be the alpha because it's going to be him and Garrett Wilson because Garrett Wilson's too good to be ignored. They signed Jeremy Ruckert, but again, you have They also drafted Breece Hall. So it's like, this is a dynasty mecca, right? Like if you're in a Superflex league, you're like, ooh, Breece Hall. Ooh, Michael Carter. Ooh, Zach Wilson. Oh, look at Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. Like these are all top 100 picks. You know what I mean? In a well, maybe not Michael Carter, but these are all top 100 picks in a dynasty startup in Superflex league. So for me, Garrett Wilson, I mean, he's not going to fall outside of the 4, but I think out of these 4 receivers that we love, which are Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams, and Treylon Burks, he probably finds himself in the worst situation, you think?
It's close between him and Jameson. I don't think either one are like a great landing spot bump. So it's those two are pretty close, but I'm really interested to see if this offense could take a Bengals turn, where kind of out of nowhere it was an offense that you were like, ugh, that offense is yuck. And all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, this offense is sexy, because they've invested a lot in that offensive line too. So when you invest a lot in the trenches and you have some good young assets, that's the recipe for a quick turnaround. And it's all going to rest solely on Zach Wilson's shoulders. If Zach Wilson can take that next step, all of a sudden, you know, not that I think they will be as talented or put up the same numbers, but Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore could turn into, you know, a poor man's production version of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So this could very quickly become a really good offense. Is there risk there? Yeah, but I'm willing to take on that risk because I believe in Zach Wilson enough. And I think these young pieces around him, the offensive minds, the culture they're building, I think I'm in on the Jets.
I'm in too, because I like all their dynasty assets. I mean, I love Breece Hall. Absolutely love him. It's going to put them in position to be able to run the ball and not put all that pressure on Zach Wilson, which I think will really help him as well. I think this year the Jets receivers will be just okay. Like they'd be lucky to be wide receiver 2s. I know that sounds like you're putting them down, but I think the 3 of those guys kind of cannibalize each other just enough to finish as like low end wide receiver 2s, maybe a wide receiver 3, you know, like it wouldn't have surprised me at all if Garrett Wilson finishes outside the top 36 of fantasy receivers this year, and Elijah Moore is their number 1 receiver when it comes to fantasy football production. I think Breece Hall will be good enough to help carry this team somewhat. Like you mentioned, the offensive line's good. They have 2 really good tackles. Heck, they actually have 3 pretty solid tackles there in New York. I think Breece Hall and Michael Carter could do enough and protect Zach Wilson enough. And I think Salah would be coming from that San Francisco offense, saw what a really strong run game can do. And their offensive coordinator, same thing, came from that offense. So they saw what the offense can do. We saw what Michael Carter could do at the back end of last year as well, put up some nice running back 1 numbers there at the back end of the year. Him and Breece Hall forming that 1-2 punch to really protect Zach Wilson, to help bring him along for year 3. And I think Jets were really trying to compete in 2023. So I think the expectation on the receivers should be very limited. And I think Breece Hall benefits the most from here, having those 3 really good receivers, the offensive line. I think Garrett Wilson hurts Elijah Moore, only for the senses like you were just hoping Moore would be the number 1 there. He's the alpha, and that's no longer the case. It's going to be kind of like you said, the Jamar Chase, T. Higgins role, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Adam Thielen, Joe, however you want to spin it, right? Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp. Like somebody gets hurt there when it comes to targets. So I like the player. I like the offense, which helps me keep Garrett Wilson at the top here. But again, you're talking about a whole bunch of offensive player, and there's only so many balls to go around.
We talked a lot. I've heard a lot of talk about Drake London, arguably the best situation early on. But I think we've overlooked a little bit Chris Olave and where he ended up and where he landed. If we're talking about Kyle Pitts to Michael Thomas, okay? Somewhat similar target share commanding possibly, but the Michael Thomas asset is descending. He is not the player he once was. And I think that, we have 2 possibly 1-year quarterbacks in Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston, but Jameis Winston has far outproduced Marcus Mariota as far as fantasy relevant wide receivers. So And outside of that, once again, there's nobody else there. There's no one to compete for targets. So I think this kind of helps Jameis Winston have a reliable target. And it might be nice for Michael Thomas too to have, a little bit of help. But from, I know we're looking at this from a veteran perspective, but from a player perspective, I would put, if there was money to be placed, I would put a sneaky bet on Chris Olave maybe being the highest producing fantasy receiver in year one out of this class.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I wouldn't do that, but okay. So the next two receivers we're going to talk about, the reason I love them so much is for their spots. The biggest thing with Olave is what they gave up to get him. They gave up a lot to trade up to get Olave. I mean, and I can't remember. I saw the trade sheet what they end up giving. It's like a 23 second, a 23 first. Like they gave up a lot to move up. Because you got to remember, they moved up to 16 by giving up their first next year to get to 16 to put them in them position to move up to 11 or 12 to get Olave, right? I think it was 11 for Olave. Yeah, because it went Wilson, Olave, and Williams. So they gave up a lot. You get that. It's easy to forget because they did it before the draft. They gave up a 23 first to move to 16. So they gave a 23 first, and then they gave up a second on top to move up to number 11. So out of any player we're going to talk about, this player has the most trade capital behind his name, right? Like this team invested a lot into him before even him signing his rookie contract. So a really good spot. Michael Thomas, we all know he's gone the moment that guarantee money's gone, right? Like as soon as that guarantee money's up, Michael Thomas is out the door. They re-signed Traquan Smith. They got Marquez Galloway there. They got Adam Troutman at tight end. But this is their number one receiver of the future. So we don't know the quarterback situation long-term. It could be Jameis Winston. I would suspect it's going to be Jameis because Jameis was playing some of the best ball he's played at the beginning of last year in New Orleans. So to me, I don't think Chris Olave does enough. My tape concerns still go back here. I don't think Olave does enough with the ball in his hands to be that wide receiver one, like rookie of the year kind of guy, number one guy. I think there's other guys on here like Drake London, Treylon Burks, Christian Watson, Sky Moore that could probably outproduce him this year. Definitely those later guys we're going to talk about. So I love the spot. I like the player, but my initial tape analysis is just not going to change. You know what I mean? Like it's just, I think he's one of those guys that's going to catch a ton of footballs and have solid yards, but end up being like that Robert Woods, like wide receiver 13, which is really good. Like it's really like he's going to be really good probably for a long time. He's going to be steady. He's a really good route runner. He's got really good speed. It's just he's never going to be that alpha. I don't ever see him as being an alpha receiver. You know what I mean? So it's always, I would rather, excuse me, amongst these names, I would rather shoot for the moon on guys that I think have the potential to be the alpha receiver. Guys like Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams, Treylon Burks. And I think Sky Moore and Christian Watson have just as much chance to do what Olave does, but also to surpass him. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to play it safe, Olave's the pick. Like, if you're on the clock, if you want to play it safe, you just want to get a solid player, Olave is certainly the pick. If you want to go upside, he's not the pick.
No, I don't hate that. And Sky Moore, I have him and Olave right in the same tier. I have Christian Watson just slightly below those guys. I think there's just a little more risk than with Olave and Sky Moore, but yeah. I'm with you on Sky. I definitely would be looking at him. Last two names we're going to talk about from the first round, because we're not going to cover Treylon since we already talked about him in the A.J. Brown trade. Jameson Williams, we already mentioned him, and Jahan Dotson. Those two players, the vets that are on those teams, anybody get a huge bump or a huge decrease because of these first-round receivers joining those teams?
Yeah, amon-ra gets an absolute massive decrease in my eyes because – listen, his late season bump got because all the other receivers on his team were hurt. TJ Watkinson was hurt. Listen, let me start with this. I still like amon-ra St. Brown, right? But like those numbers he put out at the end of the year where he was literally a top 3 fantasy receiver, that's out the door because he was the only receiver standing. They re-signed Josh Reynolds there. They still have TJ Hawkinson. They got Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, and then Jameson Williams. again, they went from 32 to 12 to go get this guy, right? They moved up their second,
Right.
they got their third, they got 32. So another team that invested a lot of draft capital into a player. So they did this envisioning that Jameson Williams is their number one receiver. And of course, Jared Goff's there, and he's going to hurt him a little bit. But listen, if Jared Goff can't get it done this year, then Jared Goff won't not be the quarterback of the Detroit Lions in 2023. So there's nothing to worry about there either. This is Dynasty fantasy football. It's long term. So to me, I would take Jameson Williams as my number 2 rookie receiver behind Garrett Wilson. Or, I mean, honestly, any order you want to put these 4 in, it's okay. I'm okay with it. I would take Jameson Williams probably for sure ahead of Treylon Burks. And then, I mean, it just depends. Like, I think I would take a different guy every single time amongst these guys. But, I mean, Jameson Williams has just as high of a ceiling, if not more, when it comes to target share as Garrett Wilson does. So, to me, he's playing inside a dome. He gets to use his speed on that turf inside the dome. He's got the draft capital behind him invested. Not only does he have the 12th overall pick, but they moved up a huge amount just to get this guy as well, to tell you how much they believe in him. So he's going to get every opportunity to become the number 1 receiver here. That's how they're going to use him. So I think Amon Brown takes the biggest hit here. I think it puts him back to that like wide receiver 2 at best range, and probably like mid-range to low-end wide receiver 2 at best, because you still have TJ Hawkinson, you still got DeAndre Swift, and Jared Goff is your quarterback. So it sounds like Jameson Williams is going to be ready to go by training camp. His surgery, he tore no other ligaments in his knee. It was just the ACL. It was a clean tear. So they're saying he's probably going to be ready. He's already running. So he's probably going to be ready by training camp. So I would assume personally that Jameson Williams is the number 1 there. And then the number 2 is going to be split between Amon and TJ Hawkinson. Because remember, TJ Hawkinson was a top 10 draft pick as well. So Amon gets crushed there. Don't love it for him at all. I think Jameson Williams is clearly going to be the number 1 there inside the dome. I think he has probably the highest ceiling amongst all these receivers we're even talk about when it comes to fantasy football production. So when you said Chris Olave is sneaky, I guess all of them are technically sneaky to be the rookie of the year. But again, they're all first-round picks, so how sneaky are they really? Actually, you said you didn't like the landing spot. I don't mind the landing spot at all. So I think if Calvin Johnson can produce there, we've seen people produce there year in and year out.
Well, Calvin
Johnson's an outlier. He's an outlier.
He was producing with Matthew Stafford too. He's got Jared Goff. Jared Goff is a quarterback that's more suited to an Amon-Ra St. Brown, somebody that's going to stay closer to the line of scrimmage. I agree it is a stock down a little bit for Amon-Ra, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as you say. But if you're going from him being wide receiver 3, sure, but I don't think anybody had expectations of Amon-Ra being a top 5 receiver this year. I think most people expected him to settle back into, for fantasy purposes, low-end wide receiver 2 type range. And so I still think he's going to finish somewhere around there, maybe low 2, high 3. But I think as far as like an expectation of him, I don't think it's crushed too bad. I worry about Jameson, not from a talent standpoint. I just worry about how much he's going to be able to get hit on those deep routes. How many opportunities he's going to have to be able to, get 40 plus yards down the field and catch a pass. So that's the only thing I'm a little worried about. We saw that as a problem for Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, where they were constantly, it was low A dot, low A dot, low A dot. I think they're going to have to change the way Jameson Williams plays a little bit to better suit Jared Goff, but he could easily be gone, and we could be talking about CJ Stroud or somebody like that throwing in passes, and then that's a very, very different story at that point. Last guy here, Jahan Dotson, Washington Commanders. This was the one where, outside of the top 4 or 5 guys, this was the one where people were like, ooh, that's kind of tough. Carson Wentz and it's
ADP is showing it too. ADP is clearly showing people are not happy with this landing spot. Jahan Dotson is slipping to the second round of a ton of rookie drafts. Almost every one I'm in, he goes like 2-1, 2-2.
which to me is like super good value. If I can get him at 2-1-2-2, I'm loving this.
Yeah.
But what does this mean for Carson Wentz? What does this mean for Terry McLaurin?
I think it hurts Terry McLaurin because Terry McLaurin strived as a number one alpha receiver there, right? Like he's a really good receiver, but like it helped that he was the only receiver, right? That helps us make us love Terry. Now he's got another receiver who kind of does a lot of what he does, and Carson Wentz is a quarterback. They've been trying to add running backs. They bring in Brian Robinson. They have Antonio Gibson. They have J.D. McKissick. They have Gluteus Minimus. Like, I don't know. Like, I agree why people are down on the landing spot, but I think it hurts Terry McLaurin. Like, and it hurts Jahan Dotson. Like, I don't love the spot either. Like, I would still take him ahead of James Cook and Dameon Pierce. So, like, he's still going in the back end of the first round for me, for sure, with that first round draft capital. But I don't know, with Carson Wentz there, man, like, I think Carson Wentz hurt Terry McLaurin too, but this just like piled on. You know what I mean? It's like I stubbed my toe and I jumped up and down on one foot because my toe hurt, and then I jumped on a tack. Like, now I'm just sitting there with two hurt feet, cursing, making up swear words. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm seeing red, Commander red. So I think this hurts Terry McLaurin enough where, like, this guy was a back end of the second, middle of the second startup pick to, like, there's a lot more sexier options now to go that way. Cause now Terry McLaurin's probably the same thing that we talked about. Because some of these other guys, like middle of the road, second round pick, or wide receiver 2. I mean, I don't see a clear path for Terry McLaurin to be a wide receiver 1 anytime soon. And that's how he's viewed for youth. And he still has to get re-signed as well. So, and they view him as a leader of that team. So there's a very high chance he's going to get re-signed there. But I don't love it for Dotson, but I think he's still good enough to produce low-end wide receiver 2 to high-end wide receiver 3 numbers. I think him and McLaurin are going to be pretty similar, but he's definitely – let me ask you this, Garrett. Would you take Sky Moore and Christian Watson ahead of Jahan Dotson?
Definitely Sky Moore, I would take. I don't know about Christian Watson. In the first round, I tend to play it safer. So I'm probably taking Dotson, but it's really close. Like, I wouldn't be upset if I ended up with Watson because an auto picked or something stupid like that, but I would probably still take Dotson over Watson.
All right. So how about we do this? We'll talk about Sky Moore. We'll talk about Christian Watson. And we'll talk about some of these running backs, how they affect their rosters in the Nerdhood episode.
All right.
How about you tell our listeners before we go, and I plug a couple other things about one of our friends that you know very dearly, and tell them how they can get hooked up at our friends at Ultimate Autographs.
Yes, we have a new read for tonight, and Rich is right. This is a company that I know and love very much. So it is Ultimate Autographs. It is the internet's most trusted, certified sports memorabilia distributor. Every day, Ultimate Autographs goes into their UA Live break room. And what a live break room is basically it's a place where guys get these boxes, mystery boxes, and you don't know what's inside. You know it's a autographed helmet, but you don't know who it is, and you get an opportunity to buy spots to win this. Because let's talk about it. A lot of times, we don't have just $300, $400 laying around to go buy a football helmet, but we might have $35, $45 to go into a live break, and you and 8 other people will get these divisions, and then you have a chance to win these items for like $45. Jerseys, you can win them for like $20. It's incredible the value that you can get, but it's so much of a thrill too. It's that gamification of it that is so much fun. I recently went in there, did some stuff in the live break room, ended up walking out with an authentic signed Edgerrin James. You guys remember Edgerrin James? Played for the Colts and the Cardinals. Great running back. I ended up with an authentic helmet of his. It was awesome. Best of all, of course, we got a promo code because it's what we always do. We make sure we get you guys these promo codes, get you guys deals. go over to ultimateautographs.com. That's ultimateautographs.com and use the promo code NERDS. When you do that, you will get $5 off your first live break spot. So you get a chance to win something really cheap. Now it's even cheaper. All right. $5 off. Use promo code NERDS. I love it. You're going to love it. It's ultimateautographs.com.
Yeah, so check them out. Make sure you check out our friends at Prize Picks using that promo code NERDS. Get to our YouTube channel, subscribe. We're still running that great promo for all of you guys to get to dynastynerds.com and use any of our tiers, whether Nerd Herd, Dynasty GM tier, the whole package, for 15% off. Use the promo code ROOKIE. It's only for our podcast listeners and YouTube listeners. Promo code ROOKIE saves you 15%. Going to give you access to the Nerd Herd episode, our bonus podcast that we do. It's going to give you access to the Dynasty GM and the film room and the nerd score and all that great stuff. But not only that, we just launched a new thing for our Nerd Herd members. As we get ready for August and our big launch of our Dynasty GM 2.0, we started a Discord channel. So we're going to be doing live AMAs in there, direct access to all of us on a podcast. This is only for Nerd Herd members. So if you want to get in there and join a community of we just opened this up last week. There's already 1,200 people in there because the Nerd Herd just piling in here. If you join the Nerd Herd, use the promo code ROOKIE for 15% off. You'll get direct access to this Discord channel. Garrett, myself, Matt do live AMAs in there, with the rest of our writers are in there as well. So you have direct access to us to talk Dynasty, talk trades, put some polls up there. And on top of that, we'll also be doing some AMAs with our writers and whatnot too. So it's a great place to get in there, commute, and talk Dynasty fantasy football. Use that promo code ROOKIE and get in that Discord channel today. On top of all the great tools, the Dynasty GM tool, #1 tool in the business. And of course, the Dynasty Nerds film room will help you already get ahead and get ready for that 23 class. Check it out. And of course, if you are a Nerd Herd member, we dive into that Nerd Herd show right now. As Matt would say, adios.